is not always fair. You got to fight for your happiness, yeah, you got to rise up. Yeah, rise up. You got to rise up. You got to rise up.
They say young men are bold and free, beware of take care. They'll tell you they're friends, but they lie, you see, beware of take care. Beware, young ladies, they're fooling you. Trust them not, they're fooling you. Beware, young ladies, they're fooling you. Beware, oh, take care. The women united will never be defeated. 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 Not the church, not the state. Women must decide their fate. Not the church, not the state. Women must control their fate. Free abortion on demand. Right to march, when do we want it now? What do we want? The right to march, when do we want it now? What do we want? The right to march, when do we want it now? What do we want? Free abortion on demand. Free march on there.
Fight, fight for the future of life. We got to fight, fight, fight against the dying of the light. We got to fight, fight, fight for every single person's right. We got to fight.
Here was a group of women. We were opting for a very unstructured organisation. We had no money. The first thing that was available to us was a 6-month research grant to actually research into the needs of women in Brisbane as they saw their needs to be. In order to apply for the grant, it was the first sort of thing. We had to form ourselves into an association. To accept the grant, we had to form ourselves into a legal body, a company limited by guarantee, along with were all of these structures which intrinsically we were opposed to. Structures of a hierarchical nature, things like status being given to founding members, for they were patrons. We had to have a board of directors, we had to have a management committee, membership dues, voting rights, exclusion. We had to detail our aims, and at that stage, we had no aims, no concrete aims that we could articulate that we were prepared to stick by in 10 years' time. We were looking and forming our own direction.
I think it was true that, aims did exist. They were very obvious aims. The point was that they weren't the sort of things that you could write into, a business, a business company's constitution. Any women's group that sets up a women's centre is by nature, by its very nature, political, because it's setting up out of the inadequacies and the needs that come out of the inadequacies of the welfare system, because it's usually most women's centres set up around those needs, their material kind of needs, but they are political in the sense that they grow out of the inadequacies of the system that you live in.
There are various components coming into that multi-purpose centre to also provide a source of employment, a source for very constructive, independent-oriented voluntary work, and also to form a focus for analysis and so ongoing political activity. So there's virtually sort of 4 sort of areas there. There's the providing service, the change that's happening, redirecting it, analysing it and making it political, and providing a focus, a social context where women are employed constructively within the whole community.
The principle is more important when it comes to the question of making decisions, who should make decisions, whether decisions should be made by a small group who are supposed to be the accountable delegates of the wider group, or whether as many decisions as possible should be ratified by a general meeting. And I think that's the position it's come to now, isn't it?
Yes.
That subcommittees are autonomous, that they make, where necessary, their own decisions. And of course, once you get a ball as big as the Women's Centre has become rolling, there are all sorts of day-to-day decisions that have to be made that you can't wait to refer even to the annual the weekly meeting. And therefore, these sort of decisions must be made quickly and by the people who have at least been given the responsibility of making them for that particular group. Should it be democratic? Should it encourage everybody to develop skills, to have their say without being frightened, being silly, being stupid, being put down for being naive or not knowing very much? Or should it leave organisation up to those who had the skills, who knew what they were doing, who'd had experience before, who automatically seemed to take control, and hence run the risk that it's not even a question of risk, it's a question of following a very time-worn path which leads to the development of organisations exactly similar to the ones which the people you're expecting to help are trying to escape.
Power to the people. Power to the people.
Ovulation's delayed through emotional upset, you're pregnant. But never mind, we've got lots of lovely consolation prizes and we've some benevolent institutions to give you advice.
Well, my dear, how can I help you? Why, I took the temperature and I put it all down the chart and I still got pregnant. Oh, do you want the child? Well, no, we can't afford any more and I have as many as I want anyway. Well, I was thinking I could have an abortion. Oh, well, we are here to help you make a sensible, well-informed and rational decision about your pregnancy. How many weeks gone are you? 6. 6? Oh, well, that's far too advanced to have an abortion. Far too advanced, yes. Don't you realise the fetus is fully formed? Fully formed! Little pinkies and toes! It's got blonde hair and flats. If you look over there in the corner, you'll see it's schoolboy. An abortion? Maddie even told me just where to go. Where to go? You could go to your eternal damnation. That's where. Anyway, it's dangerous. Well, I hope I've helped you make a rational decision in this matter. It's your decision, remember that. Nobody can help you. Be brave.
Well, Mum, how can your friendly neighbourhood doctor help you today?
I want an abortion.
Oh, well, let's not panic. Let's not rush into this. I think you need several weeks' careful consideration. I've got my skin to consider here.
I've thought about it long enough. I need an abortion.
The Information and Support Service essentially acts as a coordinating body for all the other services, really, doesn't it? I mean, if somebody rings in, then somebody from that Information and Support Group or somebody calls in, and people are encouraged to do either, can tell them what they need to know about the things available to them in terms of immediate help. So if somebody rings in and says, I want to leave home, I want to leave my husband, I want custody of my children, they can that night go to the refuge. That can be arranged for them because the refuge is, more or less part of the total project.
It's not more or less, it definitely is part of the total multi-purpose centre.
Yeah. The integral part, yeah.
It happens to be in a different building.
But it's still very much within the association.
Yeah, that's true, but I don't know whether it's appropriate to talk about it here, but there has been, not split, but I mean, they have almost at times been two quite separate groups with a lot of interaction because it's necessary for Cairns Street to have the refuge. It's absolutely essential for it to have the refuge in order to operate.
There have been misunderstandings, but is it just that Shelter is the first subcommittee that is actually functioning in a practical way, therefore is having a whole lot of different problems to the other subcommittees which are acting in theory?
Maybe. When it finally came to the crunch, there was a house available and were people prepared to work there and staff the shelter. It was still met with a very large amount of hostility. And I think that what boiled down there was in terms of that structure that we were talking about before, in that there were even a smaller group of women in the association who were doing a hell of a lot of work and were really bogged down by it. They just felt amazing responsibility because they'd been given that job to do, and they just felt totally bogged down. And the idea of going out and setting up a shelter with all the hassles attendant to that, especially from what we'd heard from down south, was just such a incredible task it just wasn't on.
And that was because they assumed, wasn't it, that it would be up to them to do it, and yet a whole new group of women suddenly emerged and assumed responsibility for the shelter, and that's been a very good thing.
They all had sort of, very sort of radical revolutionary concepts, and they were generally sort of moulded down by working within the government, forming ourselves as a creditable organisation, as you were saying. And after the process of 2 years, we were very careful about what we were going to do. We were very, we watched all our words. We'd learned to write bureaucratic letters, and along the way, that whole sort of radical component was being eased out. And the group that was offering to start shelter were like the initial group 2 years ago. They were really young, incredibly enthusiastic, incredibly active, like, let's do it. And if it doesn't work, we've learned something and we've done at least 4 weeks' work. And that just frightened the people who'd been working for 2 years to be credible. It was just such a scary threat.
Yeah, it was. It's the same as government as when the funds came through. There were massive freakouts with some people in the association, with a lot of people. The kind of enormity that suddenly after 2 years
There was all this money.
yeah, right. It had been there in theory, but we'd never really believed that we'd get it. And then suddenly, with no warning virtually, a telegram arrived saying you have been granted $97,000 to set up a health centre and $23,000 for 3 months for the shelter. That was a, for women who hadn't had to think in terms of money of that enormity.
Annual income is an average of $4,000
a year. That those telegrams were incredibly frightening because suddenly all the theory became a reality, and here was the money to prove that reality. But people are coping, aren't they? I mean, they are now. Yeah.
Oh, really well. They're spending it really well.
Girls, don't return for life. Show a little fight, girls, show a little fight. Don't be careful of the spending, in case you get the lost. Just recognize your value and you won't go back. The women united will never be defeated. The women united will never be defeated. This way. Hey, watch out! What is my charge?
By a local direction.
What's your name? Watney. Wagner.
Do you like being beaten up? That's what he said. Do you like being beaten up? Police Constable 4087.
To me, the biggest problem is racism first and foremost, and just what it has done to the Aboriginal woman in Australia. There's so many of the myths that have been put forward and so many of the lies that have been perpetuated in regards to Aboriginal women. And Aboriginal women themselves have been so brainwashed. I can remember when I was small, some of the ways that I used to try to hide it. Like whenever we went out in the sun, we'd say, we wear hats with long sleeve shirts so we won't get burnt too black. Because the fairer skinned you are, the better treatment you receive by white people.
Yeah.
The most visible enemy that Aboriginal people have in Australia are the police force and just what they're capable of doing to Aboriginal people. Yeah, it's just really common for Aboriginal women to be raped by policemen, you know, you could go out and probably find an Aboriginal woman or groups of Aboriginal women that have been raped in one night by policemen. And this is really common knowledge amongst Aboriginal women and Aboriginal people as a whole. But if you try to convince other people, mainly white people, that this does happen to Aboriginal people, Aboriginal women, that they're continually raped, and they don't really have any power of redress against policemen, because their powers just seem to be so, well, they protect themselves so well. I can remember one young lass, she'd gone to a party, I think at Wacol, and she was hitchhiking home. This guy picked her up, and of course he drove her off into the scrub and he pulled a knife on her and said that, you know, he'd just cut her throat if she didn't consent. And so he raped her, and then he just, really battered her, and he drove her back to the main road and pushed her out of his car. When she got home, she told the people at her place what had happened. They took her to the hospital. The hospital admitted her. The doctor asked her what was wrong. They explained to him that she'd been raped, and he then rang the police. The police arrived before the doctor even treated her. The police then took her to the watch house and started questioning her about rape, in a not a very complimentary manner, and saying, oh, you were asking for it, you enjoyed it, you wanted it, didn't you? Oh, she hit this policeman because he was insulting her all the time, calling her black slut, and she enjoyed it, she wanted it, and she hit him. And one of the other policemen then got a leather jacket, put it over her head and said she was going mad, and just about strangled her in the process. You know, they knocked her down to the floor, and he kept this leather jacket around her head. And then she was arrested for assaulting a policeman and for abusive language. What Aboriginal woman would really have the courage, you know, to go in and report rape or try to bring any charges against any members of the police force?
Yeah, we got to fight, fight, fight for every single human's right. Yeah, we got to fight, fight, fight. We got to fight with all our might.
False complaint is a political weapon to deter women from reporting rape. Most rapes now are not reported. If women feel that they themselves are going to be charged with reporting rape, then the very small proportion of rapes that are reported now will drop even lower. The demonstration is about the case of Irene. Irene was raped in her home in Woodridge in June last year. She reported that complaint to the police. Several days later, she was visited by the police. They had, in the meantime, spoken with the rapist and his mates. Irene was then charged with making a false complaint. She was convicted of that charge in February this year. She's appealing against that conviction in June. Today, as Sylvia said, there are national demonstration and international support for Irene in her case against false complaint. And the false complaint is just the extreme way in which women themselves are put on trial in a rape case. The rapist isn't on trial in a rape case, the woman's on trial.
Women tend to think that these are their own personal and private individual problems until they talk about it with other women and realise that they're the problems of women as a group. And once you realise that women as a group have problems, you start to learn something about the way women relate to wider society.